Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 1 would like to share about narrative text with reading comprehension. Narrative text is a type of text that tells us about story or past events from the beginning to the end. Next, the purpose. The purpose of the narrative text is to entertain the readers through the amusing story. Next, kind of narrative. There's four kind of narrative. The first one is legend. Legend is a traditional story, sometimes popularly regarded as historical but unauthenticated, such as the legend of King Arthur, the legend of Maling Kundang, Tangkuban Perahu, and etc. The second is myth. A traditional story, especially one concerning the early history of a people of explaining some natural or social phenomenon, and typically involving supernatural beings or events, such as Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Nordic mythology, and etc. The third, fairy tale. Fairy tale is a children's story about magical and imaginary beings and lands. For the example is Cinderella, Pinocchio, Sleeping Beauty, and etc. And last, fables. Fables is a short story, typically with animal as characters, conveying a moral, such as Puss in Boots, The Ugly Duckling, Si Kancil, and etc. Next, the generic structure. The generic structure of narrative text are: first, orientation. Orientation has function to introduce the character, story stem, background of place, background of time, and background of scene. Okay, the second is complication. Complication. The plots of the story are here in complication. Rising action, where the problem begins, climax, which is top of the problem, and falling action, which is the problem is solving. Next, the third is resolution. Resolution has function to explain the ending of the story. It could be the happy ending, sad ending, or etc. And the last one, the fourth, reorientation. Reorientation has function to explain about moral value of the story. Reorientation is optional in narrative text, so it's not a must in a narrative text.
The Ugly Duckling. A little duckling was terribly unhappy because he thought he was the ugliest amongst all his brother and sister. They did not play with him and titillated the poor ugly duckling. One day he saw his reflection within the water and cried, "Nobody likes me, I'm so ugly." He decided to go away from home and went far off into the wood. Deep within forest, he saw a cottage which there lived an old lady, her Helen, and her cats. The duckling stayed with them for a few times. However, he was sad their unshortly life. Once the winter set in, the poor duckling nearly frozen dead. A peasant took him home to his woman and kids. The poor duckling was afraid to kiss and escaped. The ugly duckling spent the winter in a very marshy lake. Finally, spring arrived. One day, the duckling saw the gorgeous one swimming within the lake and fell in love with her. Then again, he remembered how everybody made fun of him and he bent his head down in shame. Once he saw his own reflection in the water, he was astonished. He wasn't a sightly duckling any longer, but handsome young swan. Now he knows why he has looked so completely different from his brother and sister. They were duckling, but I'm used to be baby sound. he said to himself. He married the gorgeous one and lived happily ever after.
The first question for the ugly duckling story. Why did the baby duck decide to leave home? A. He saw a swan. B. He's trying to catch a kid. C. He saw his reflection and thought nobody liked him because he was ugly. You can see at the first paragraph. One day he saw his reflection in the water and cried, "Nobody likes me, I'm so ugly." He decided to go away from home and went far off into the woods. So the answer is C.
Number 2. After leaving home, where did the duckling go? A. He went to the hills. B. A cottage in a deep forest. C. He went to another village. And the answer is B. A cottage in a deep forest. You can find the answer by scanning technique. Scanning technique is reading technique to find the specific answer. In the second paragraph, there's Utran said, deep within the forest, he saw a cottage in which there lived an old lady. That explained about the cottage deep within the forest, just like what the option B about.
Question number 3. Who took the ugly duckling to home after going away from cottage? The answer A. A peasant.
Number 4. Where did ugly duckling spend the winter? The answer is B. Marshy pond. Penjelasannya adalah karena terdapat pada paragraf 2 kalimat terakhir, the ugly duckling spent the winter in a marshy pond.
Question number 5. When did the ugly duckling see a gorgeous swan? A. Winter. B. Summer. C. Spring. Jawabannya adalah C. Penjelasannya terdapat pada paragraf terakhir kalimat pertama, yaitu bunyi kalimatnya adalah finally, spring arrived. One day, the duckling saw a gorgeous swan swimming within the lake and fell in love with her. Jadi jawaban nomor 5 adalah C, spring. A Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. One day, a queen was sitting close to a very stunning window while caroling and seeing the snow. Accidentally, her finger was cut by a stitching needle, so 3 drops of blood dripped out. The drops of blood fell on the snow. The red color of the blood that was stuck within the white of the snow looked terribly pretty. Suddenly, the queen thought, if solely I had a toddler whose skin was as white as snow and whose lips were as red as blood. As the time went by, finally, a queen gave birth to a really pretty princess whose skin was as white as snow and whose lips were as red as blood. The queen grew up as a really pretty and kind-hearted woman. She was referred to as Snow White. However, once Snow White was becoming a teenager, the queen died owing to associate in nursing sickness. Once the queen died, the king married once more. This new queen was weak and displeased Snow White. The queen gave orders that Snow White was to be treated as a servant. Every day, the queen stood ahead of her magic mirror while asking, "Who is the most stunning lady within the land?" And also the mirror continually answered, "You are the foremost stunning one in all."
The new queen asked constant questions every day, and also the mirror continuously answered the constant factor. However, one day the mirror answered that the queen was so stunning, but Snow White was rather more stunning than the queen. It created the queen so angry that she gave orders to at least one of her huntsmen to require Snow White into the woods and kill her. The huntsman had such a short heart that he couldn't do the deed. He told her to run away. In her fleeing into the woods, she found an area in which 7 dwarfs lived. Their house was tiny and strange. Snow White entered the insufficient house and located it terribly untidy. Then she began to shut down the whole house. Upstairs, she found 7 very little beds. She was so excited and she stretched on one in all the beds. Shortly then, she was asleep on the bed. When the dwarf came home, they were shocked to seek out Snow White, and after some argument, they said to let her keep. She is secure to cook and look after them. She lived there happily. Unfortunately, the queen discovered the place where Snow White was living and disguising herself as a witch. She then took a poisoned apple and kicked it off for the dwarf's bungalow. She gave Snow White the poisoned apple to eat, and presently, as she bit the apple, she sank into a state of mind. Thinking she was dead, the dwarf engineered a glass coffin and placed her in it. 4 days, she lay within the forest in her glass coffin. One day, the prince was riding through the forest searching for Snow White and located her. She leaned over and kissed her. She opened her eyes and sat up with a smile. Everybody was happy at that point. The prince took Snow White to his place wherever they were married and lived merrily ever once. Done. 1. Who was the pretty princess who has skin as white as snow and her lips as red as blood? We can see at the second paragraph, as time glided, finally the queen gave birth to a really pretty princess whose skin as white as snow and whose lips as red as blood. She referred to as Snow White, so the answer is B, Snow White.
Number 2. Why did the queen ask the huntsman to kill Snow White? A. Because Snow White is prettier than the queen. B. Because Snow White has an apple. C. Because Snow White has good skin. And the answer is A. Because Snow White is prettier than the queen. You can find the answer by scanning technique. In the 4th paragraph, there's Utren say, however, Snow White was rather more stunning than the queen. It created the queen so angry that she gave orders to at least one of her huntsmen to require Snow White into the woods and kill her. It indicates that Evil Queen asked the huntsman to kill Snow White, so Evil Queen can be the prettiest.
Question number 3. Where does Snow White go after she ran from the huntsman? Answer B, wood.
Number 4. What did the queen give to Snow White after knowing that she's still alive? The answer is C, a poisoned apple. Karena kita dapat lihat di paragraf pertama baris kedua, yaitu she then took a poisoned apple and kicked it off for the dwarf bungalow.
Question number 5. How did Snow White wake up after eating the poisoned apple? A. A prince comes and kisses her. B. A prince gives her another apple. C. A prince comes to give her some money. Let's see on the text. On the last paragraph. One day, the prince was riding through the forest searching for Snow White and located her. He leaned over and kissed her. So the answer is A. A prince comes and kisses her.
Long ago, when the god and goddess used to mingle in the affairs of mortals, there was a small kingdom on the slope of Mount Wayang in West Java. The king, named Sang Prabu, was a wise man. He had an only daughter called Princess Teja Nirmala, who was very famous for her beauty, but she was not married. One day, Sang Prabu made up his mind to settle the matter through a show of strength. After that, Prince of Balambang named Raden Megawan won the competition. Unfortunately, the wicked fairy princess fell in love with Raden Megawan, used magic power to render him unconscious, and he forgot his wedding. When Sang Prabu was searching, Raden Begawan saw him and soon realized that he had been enchanted by the wicked fairy. The fairy couldn't accept this, so he knew Raden Begawan. When Princess Teja Nirmala heard this, she was very sad, so fairy took her to the Kahyangan.
First question. Which one of the following statements is false about Sang Prabu? A. Sang Prabu was the father of his only daughter. It's true, we can see at the second paragraph. B. Sang Prabu was a king of a kingdom in West Java. It's true, we can see at the first paragraph. C. Sang Prabu was taken to Kahyangan by a wicked fairy. It's not true. D. Sang Prabu was a wise man. It's true, we can see at the first paragraph. So the answer is C.
Number 2. Why did the wicked fairy use her magic to make Raden Begawan unconscious? A. She didn't like Raden Begawan. B. She didn't want Raden Prabu to marry the princess. C. She wanted Teja Nirmala to forget about her wedding. And D. She didn't want the prince of Blambangan to marry the prince. And the answer for this question is D. She didn't want prince of Blambangan to marry the princess. You can find the answer by using scanning technique. In the third paragraph, there's utterance say Princess Segara fell in love with Raden Begawan and used magic power to render him unconscious and he forgot his wedding. It indicates that Princess Segara used her magic power because she fell in love with Raden Begawan. That's why the answer is D.
Question number 3. What do you think will happen if God or a goddess cannot mingle in the affair of the people on earth at that time? So the answer is D. Raden Begawan will be died.
Number 4. So a nice fairy took her to Kahyangan. In paragraph 2, what does the word her in sentence refers to? The answer is C. Princess Nirmala, because before the sentence is when Princess Teja Nirmala heard this.
The last question. What is the similarity between fairies and humans according to the text? A. The place they live. B. The jealousy that they cause. C. The way they don't feel love. D. The strength they have. The answer is B. The jealousy that they cause. Ini terletak pada paragraf terakhir. The fairy could not accept this, so she knew Raden Begawan. When Princess Teja Nirmala heard this, she was very sad, so the fairy took her to the Kahyangan. So the answer is D.